Jeffrey, you gotta get a second from me, buddy.
That was an aggressive lift by Dad. Come on, break the record, Jeff. Oh, this is 10 seconds, 12 seconds, 15 seconds. Go for the record. Oh, my God. It's a new record.
Let me have the mic. Can I have the mic?
So blow, blow, Seminole wind, blow like you're never gonna blow again.
Well, I'm here. I'm not sure where Corey went. He was supposed to come out here. He's supposed to be here for this big win. The Noles have lost. Oh, it's coming in hot.
I made it.
Cheer for a good team again.
Cheers. Go Noles.
Go Noles.
Hi, guys. Nice to see y'all. It's been a long time.
And away we go. Welcome in. Good morning. As always, Warchant Gameday underway. I'm Jeff. That is Tom. Thanks for being here, everybody. We know the kind of loyalty you must possess to be tuned in at 9 a.m. game day in a 1-7 campaign, and we do appreciate it. Tommy, how you doing this morning, buddy?
I'm ready to watch some football. Our football. It's funny. We go through the week. I told you on a Wednesday on the Jeff Cameron Show, wildly popular as it is, 1 to 4 p.m. Monday, Wednesday through Friday, that I was broken watching how North Carolina is not great and Florida State has a chance, but that's the broken record. Florida State taking on a lot of opponents that aren't great, and then we lose. But damn it if I didn't wake up on a Saturday morning in November and say, let's watch some Noles football. I want to see the kids. Come on. Give us something today. How about we double our win total on a Saturday in November?
Well, you got to block Rucker, and that'll be the whole key to the game. If they do that, they've got a shot. They got to handle the pressure. You know, it's well documented. A lot of you do what I do. What we all do is as the week rolls along, you turn your attention away from the previous performance and towards the next game, and then you look at what that opponent did and what they've done up to this point. North Carolina is a weird team, a very weird team, because I'm sure you noticed this, Tommy, when you went through for all your articles and the stuff that we do on Warchant that you do specifically, you'll note that North Carolina has some really good players. There are 4 to 5 kids that you're like, oh, I really wish he were on our team. You know, you look especially on that defense, and yet that defense is the same one that gave up 70 to James Madison, that has had a hard time at various points this year. Their offense at times has really had quite a bit of success. They got a very good running back. They've got pieces in place where you kind of wonder how it was they went on the 4-game losing streak. You wonder, you know, why it is that they've been so up and down. And again, you might remind yourself, Mac Brown coaches that team, and that's kind of how that goes with Mac Brown over the years. It might be. But, you know, this past week is what concerns you. Because in this past week, they did something that really you rarely see, and that is amass 10 sacks in a single game. They had 10 sacks. You know, we were talking this week on the aforementioned Jeff Cameron Show that when the Jets beat the Texans on Thursday night, that they had 33 hits on the quarterback and 8 sacks. In an NFL football game, it should never happen that somebody gives up 8 sacks or that your quarterback, who's your franchise in their case, C.J. Stroud, gets hit 33 times. Virginia's quarterback's like, what about me, Jeff? Good God. I mean, that guy got sacked 10 times, must have been hit another 30. It was insane what took place last week. And, you know, I imagine that is the blueprint that you'll see this afternoon when Florida State takes the field. If you're North Carolina and your Coach Collins as you know, the defense coordinator, you're not going to change what you did because it's the most successful you've been all year. And you've also watched video of Florida State's offensive line. and you've watched video of these young quarterbacks, so you know the key is going to be to turn up the heat and see how Florida State handles it. I really wonder today, right out the gates, Tom, I'll just say it. What does Mike have dialed up for the heat and the pressure that he's going to see from this North Carolina defense this afternoon? That's the whole game in a nutshell. Early on, do you have something to offset that pressure and make them play you a little bit more honest?
Yeah, well, that's Calandria just dropped his eye level a ton last week too. He didn't handle the pressure. We look at quarterback play for the NFL draft every year, and we have a lot of fun doing it. But one of the things we look for is against the rush, or when you break the pocket, where are your eyes? Is it to take off and run, or is it that you're staying down the field and looking for developments down the field? And you'll trade a little bit of punishment to deliver a strike for an explosive play at 15 and 20 yards. And Calandria was like somebody on a beach with Greg Norman. His eye level just kept on dropping down, and he's saying, what in the world? Because Virginia did not have any answers for the consistent pressure.
That's right.
That North Carolina was bringing. And so they said, oh, this is working. It's better than giving up 50 points. Let's see if they adjust to it. So let's just keep on bringing the heat. And it worked out to where they got up to a big, big lead. And to your point, there are some players for North Carolina on offense. J.J. Jones at receiver, physical guy who, he only has 26 catches this year, under 500 yards. That's more about Mac Brown. That dude will fight you in a one-on-one setting and rip the ball away, something that's a far cry from what we see out of Florida State's offense. And so to me, the thing about what Mike Norvell would have dialed up for the pressures, because you don't have somebody who is just going to rip the ball away in a one-on-one setting, a la Keon Coleman in overtime against Clemson, or any other example that you want to point to for Keon Coleman, it's about, to me, getting down the field in one-on-ones, letting the ball go. You've got two young quarterbacks with live arms. We've seen it. Brock has, for his size, a very strong arm down the field. And then Luke's first collegiate pass on the road was a beaut of 40, 50 yards of a rainbow. I thought it was going to be deep through the end zone. It ended up being right in the breadbasket, and of course it was dropped. But it is my sincere hope that whatever plan Mike has for pressure is not around the line of scrimmage like so much of what we do, because typically in that type of setting, defensive backs jump everything. They jump the first move. They'd rather live underneath in terms of the coverage. I'm hoping that today, if you see the pressure, the hot is downtown, or it's at least a slant that's a little bit deeper than just air yards for 4 or 5 yards, because you just want to get the ball out and you hope your guys can block to the perimeter. Let's have a little bit more of a deep ball game against that pressure, and let these kids air it out. And maybe, just maybe, because Elijah Moore could get more time, or BJ Gibson or Lawayne McCoy, this is the hope that you see some of those receivers have ball skills that the veterans just simply haven't shown through their entire careers.
But and I know that if you're going to throw the deep ball, you're going to have to obviously let it develop. And I just wonder with this offensive line if that's even something you can do. Now, you can throw fades, and if you have a lot of one-on-one stuff, you can just say, hey, I'm going to throw, I'm going to throw you open.
Yes, yeah, throw it to a spot.
Yeah, I'm going to throw you open. You got to go get it. I think the hard part, Tom, we do this a lot, and I'm not trying to strike in overly pessimistic stance before a game kicks off today, because I do think North Carolina is susceptible, and I don't think you're wrong in terms of a strategy to combat what North Carolina is going to bring. The problem is, again, you don't know that you have the personnel up front to execute the blocking necessary to throw the ball down the field. And then number two, and in this case, oddly, I'd be more concerned about this than I would the former, and that is, who's going to get that football? Which wide receiver are you pointing to that's going to go make that play? Because so far there hasn't been nary a one that will. Now, that could change, and that's the optimism that you have in your heart any given Saturday. That's especially true when you're beginning to play all of those young guys. When you're playing Gibson, and you're playing McCoy, and you're playing Moore, and you're playing Williams, you're playing Thomas, and you're playing all these guys that we wanted to see, that we do think have very real upside. Maybe one of them emerges on an afternoon like this one. Maybe one of those kids goes and makes a play. They certainly, I would think, have the fire to do so. The impetus to do so is there because they're getting that desired playing time. The opportunity is there. It only takes a couple to I think, cool North Carolina off a little bit here and make them, again, play a little bit more balanced. And then maybe you can introduce the run game. I'm very, very intrigued to see. Last week, in addition to Virginia's problems protecting the quarterback, they couldn't run the ball either, Tom. And I think that's where you wonder, did North Carolina find something, or was Virginia completely broken going into that game? I mean, this is where when you singularly cover a team like we do or anybody does on any beat anywhere, you know what you see elsewhere based on the TV coverage you get every Saturday. You watch their games. Well, sometimes there are no indicators from the outside that something is going south on the inside for any one program. And so you watch a game and then you're sitting there hours into it and you go, what the hell happened to Virginia? I mean, this isn't the same team we've seen. This happens a lot, right? Who knows? Maybe they were on the precipice of this sort of thing. So I don't know, but that result, that score, and the way that game played out was very, very different than any one of us would have expected. Remember, North Carolina came into that game last week as the broken team, as the team that really, it all started with the 70 points they gave up against James Madison. North Carolina lost 70-50. They blew a 20-0 lead against that Duke team, which doesn't have a lot of offense. And they gave up 3 touchdowns at the end and lost 21-20. They gave up 34 points to Pitt and lost that game 34-24. Georgia Tech, who's not any good, scores on the last play, wins the game 41-34. Now, I know you immediately fire back at me, those out there watching. Yeah, they're not any good, but they beat us. Yeah, so does everybody. We're terrible. That's a given. And then, Virginia, they turned around and suddenly win 41-14. So there was nothing about the previous 4 games that suggested any of that was coming for North Carolina. Maybe they fall back into what they were previous. I hope.
Well, I think it's a streaky group, and they got out in front, and they played from in front. Like, I get what you're saying, that they blew a couple of leads earlier in the season, but this was a group that, again, Virginia early in the game, they get a short field. It's 1st and goal from the 1. They get a high snap. They end up with 3 points in that situation. North Carolina had already scored. North Carolina adds to the lead. They get to the final 2 minutes of the first half, and it's a 2-score game at that point. Deep ball prayer. J.J. Jones fights off the defender, makes a catch on the left side of the end zone. It's a touchdown for North Carolina. And so they go into the halftime locker room with a 3-score lead and feeling very good about themselves. Virginia's response in the second half, not so great. North Carolina extends it. Like, the game got away from Virginia. I'm not trying to apologize for North Carolina's win. I'm just saying that situationally, some things went North Carolina's way. There was a snowball effect of momentum, something we never see this season. We haven't seen once this year. We're like, the momentum got away from the opponent, and we took and ran with the momentum. That's what North Carolina did. I mean, literally, in 8 games, we have not seen that once for us. It's just wild to think about how we're sitting here on Saturday, November the 2nd, and we are looking for our 2nd win of the year. But that's where we are. The thing is that I think with North Carolina, if you remind them of their troubles early and you go to a place we haven't offensively, which is successful, then maybe they, from a confidence standpoint, back off a little bit. And you can let 1 play turn into 2 and 2 plays turn into 4. But it has to be from an unforeseen place, because our offense is obviously in the 130s and everything. So it's going to have to be the youth that provides you the spark. And they're going to have to be locked in and invested. This is going to be, sadly, a sleepy day in Tallahassee. Everywhere I turn, be it the tribal council, my phone and group text messages on iMessages or WhatsApp or social media, everywhere I look, people are saying 4 tickets for free, 8 tickets if you can go. I canceled my hotel room. You want a tailgate pass? Here you go. Here's your tailgate pass. This is going to be a light and sparse crowd. If I was Doak Campbell Stadium after kickoff, I would just let the security people walk to the side. Anybody that wants to come on in and go to the game, come on in and go to the game. They need your support today, and I'm afraid it's going to be not great, even with a 50,000-seat capacity. It's not like North Carolina's bringing droves of people to town, because that's what this conference does. Doesn't travel for football.
We wondered how the results of these games and the disastrous season that Florida State's put forth this year, when it would affect the attendance, because it's been skewed by the fact that the attendance is already going to be well below what it normally is with the construction. So if you have 40,000 and a 50,000 seat max, it looks like it's nearly full. You're kind of like, oh, all right. So we had 43,000, which is a paltry amount of fans at a game. But if the capacity is 52,000, 53,000, you're like, oh, it's pretty full for a team that's this bad. Yeah, you really can't hide how bad it is if 25,000 show up. If you have a half-empty stadium that's already 30,000 below capacity, it's going to be a tough one to swallow. But it's inevitable when you lose games, and when you lose games in historic fashion, in ways that we've never seen. And that's where Florida State's at. So I don't know that they can be all that surprised that people weren't flocking to Tallahassee in droves, even though it's going to be a gorgeous day for football. I would really like to see, and that's a lot of hopefulness in the air. Of course, this is true for anybody going to the game. Can you get off to a good start? Can you get off to a start that allows you to believe a little bit? We talk a lot about the psyche of this team and where it's at. Of course, you want to, on a show like this, get into the X's and O's and about ways that you can attack and ways that you should guard against being attacked. That's all fair, but I think this team is broken down in a lot of ways. They're physically broken down on the offensive line, which is also a broken record. I got to say, I'm about tired of that. Everybody's hurt all the time, and it is a wonder. But then in addition to that, mentally, I think they're obviously shattered. When you watch this team, something goes wrong, and you feel the air come out of the balloon. It's like as soon as it does, Tom, you can just see the shoulders slump. You see guys, it's a here we go again mentality. And if you're going to win a game in which, unfortunately, you are an underdog at home against a team that's lost 4 of their last 5, that'll tell you about the season. If you're going to, you got to get off to a good start, because the good news today, and we just kind of alluded to it, North Carolina is streaky as hell, just like Florida State can be, or some teams have been. North Carolina will look like a world beater for a quarter and then play a dud of a next quarter. They'll have a game where you go, whoa, looks like old Mac's got him a team this year. And 2 weeks later, you look up, you're like, they lost the last 2 games by 30? What's going on in Chapel Hill? It's a really weird sort of dynamic. So on the one hand, I talk about how nervous I get seeing 10 sacks the week before and dialing up pressure on every play against Virginia, to which they had no answer. On the other hand, they lost the week before that, and the week before that, and the week before that, and the week before that. And in many of those games, they gave up a ton of points. So, it is hard to know what you're going to get from either one of these teams. Now, that Florida State's not going to look like a well-oiled machine. That Florida State's not going to look like one of the best offenses in the country. That's not going to change when you're playing very young players and your offensive line is, every week a different 5. It's just not going to change. And, we know Rizzi's starting today at guard. We'll see. I've been every week, I've told you guys when we do this show, I try to say it in a way that lets you know that I'm a little worried about what available personnel there is without actually saying it so I don't get in trouble with the team. But every week, there's somebody who you think might be starting that doesn't start. This week's no different. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, part of me is like, well, just say it, because, they feed it to Thamel every week, and then he tweets it out. He didn't do anything today so far because it probably wouldn't rate, doesn't get any views on the tweet. Like, oh, okay, whatever. What's James Madison's availability like this weekend? This is a day where I think the defensive line has to set the tone and continue to be invested. The interior of the defensive line has been the antithesis of some of the things that I complain about, which is I see veterans going for a jog too often. I did last week against Miami, a game that's sacred. You should be in 5th gear at all times, and I saw a lot of 2nd and 3rd gear, which drove my ass nuts. But not for Darrell Jackson, not for Josh Farmer. And those 2 guys are going to be key again today. And Darrell Jackson, I would think, is going to continue the trend of the last 2 games where he played well, because he's starting to feel it. And the more you do this, the higher your draft grade goes, and the higher your draft grade goes, the more money you stand to make for Sundays. I'm not saying that he's not about the team, because every time we interview Darrell Jackson, he seems like a really nice guy. But it's just, it wasn't happening for him on the field at the level that his size and measurables would suggest. Now, the last couple of games, you've seen him take over drives, make plays in the opponent's backfield, make a quarterback think twice, or a running back kind of gingerly approach the line of scrimmage because they see that 6 has shed again, and there he is making a play in the backfield. But that's where it's going to have to start here, because the quarterback for North Carolina, Jacoby Criswell, can run, but he prefers not to run. He'd prefer to stand in the pocket and throw. So this is a guy that can be affected by the interior pass rush. Sometimes when you face a mobile quarterback, the interior pass rush is great and all, but they'll just break the pocket and take off because that's the nature of the way that they want to play the game. You've got a guy who wants to stand in there and throw it. So that's important in the passing game. And in the running game, obviously, they've got a 1,000-yard rusher in Amari Hampton. And Florida State is going to have to bring the thunder there, because North Carolina is, at least prior to today, willing to run the ball over and over and over if it's working. Now, Mac Brown can get involved at times. This did happen a couple of years ago with Carter and Javonte Williams, where they were the two-headed monster. And he's like, you know what's a great idea? Let's throw it with Sam Howell all day.
Over and over and over again.
What the hell? And that's how we beat them in a year where we had no business beating North Carolina, because Mac got involved somehow, some way, and you had obvious evidence in front of you that we weren't going to stop the run. But if North Carolina sticks with their 1,000-yard rusher, again, that's a monster season. You've got a month to go. You're already at 1K. Then you need your defensive front to be ready to go. And here's hoping that we see Sione Lolohea a lot more on the field, because if you are going to face an opponent that runs first, hell, I don't care. I want Sione out there because he impacts the game more than either of our two starting defensive ends in the beginning of the season have.
You mentioned everybody that needed to be mentioned. Jones, Hampton, I mentioned Rucker. They've got good players, good personnel. It makes me kind of angry when I go through the games and see some of the players they have. Many of them are, in my eyes, better players than players we have, and that really shouldn't happen. It shouldn't be a situation where it really stands out. He, in particular, Tom, does stand out. I mean, that's a beast of a back, and you got to want to tackle him. I think you guys remember me saying last week on this show that my real fear against Miami wasn't Ward, believe it or not, but rather the running game, the offensive line of Miami and the Martinez kid. If you didn't want to tackle him, and we didn't, he was going to run wild, and he did. And there were moments that you had him bottled up, but refused to get him to the ground. So he scampered another 30, 40, 50 yards. And at the end of the day, you look at those rush statistics for Miami, it's what won them the game. I mean, they really were kind of bottled up in the pass game. Restrepo didn't do anything. Ward had a season low, didn't throw a touchdown pass. In the passing game, they were resorting to really silly either check downs or flippity-doos where they threw back to Ward, or, I mean, they weren't really killing Florida State in the pass game at all. They just decided in any important third down, we're going to line up and run the football. Well, you got another guy that is that guy for them. And I would imagine anything 3rd and 4 or shorter, they'll just line up and hand him the ball and attack the interior of your defense.
Yeah, so in watching last week's game against Virginia, because, again, North Carolina being streaky, you want to look at the best version of your opponent to get an idea of what you would need to stop when they're rolling. It looked like they favored their right hand, as though they were a point guard who wants to drive to the right. And, in fact, the numbers break that down. This is another place where, Pro Football Focus can be useful. Rather than grading what the left guard did in the game, how about you tell me the area that they run the football, because that's a little bit more cut and dry in evaluation. And so they do run to the right. You can see like the yards per attempt. It's the 4th column from the left. You can see what a difference it makes when they run to the right side of the center, everywhere from the A gap all the way to the outside. These numbers are Omari and Hampton's for the season. And you can tell that North Carolina runs to the right. So regardless if they're to the field or the boundary, does not matter. To me, I want to see what defensive end Florida State lines up against the right tackle. I'm hoping it's Lolohea a whole lot today. I'm hoping it's not Marvin Jones. I'm hoping that if it's one of the two starters, then it's Pat Payton. I want to see what's where they have the linebackers aligned, who stays on that right side, because there is a clear disparity here. The farther left you go on the ground, the worse they get. So A gaps all the way through to the right tackle, off tackle right. this is where you want to watch and see where Amari and Hampton's going to be today. And by extension, what Florida State defenders do they stack up against that run?
Well, this is standard, though, Tom. This would also get to your point about, and really our points this year about the frustration where we sometimes palms to the sky asking why. This is an easy personnel decision. Now, you're more than hinting. You're beating the audience over the head, rightfully so, with, hey, by the way, Lola Hayes should start and be on the field at all times, and Marvin Jones Jr. should never play unless it's 3rd and 15. That's what you're saying, and you're right to say it, and we've all watched it. But how would a coordinator not know that? He wouldn't need to look at Pro Football Focus. He just need watch the games. One, cannot stand up against the run, doesn't want to stand up against the run, isn't physical enough to set the edge, doesn't care to set the edge, isn't really interested in tackling. This is an obvious answer to a question. So if you see it, you understand why so many people rightfully find themselves outraged and demand the heads of said coaches. It's a hard thing when it's such an obvious answer. You don't have to be a football Mensa to see which guys stand up against the run, take it on head first, and those that don't. Just like you don't have to be a football savant to understand who turns down physicality and who invites it and brings the thunder. So, that's why when you're watching a game a week ago, when you see Earl Little Jr. come flying in to make a play, you're almost aghast, like, oh, well, I bet that's a penalty. And, of course, it's not. It's just a player playing fast. You're so accustomed to seeing what I consider to be going through the motions that when you see somebody play hard, you get excited. When you see somebody stop the run and set the edge, you get excited because it's infrequent, especially if Marvin Jones Jr. is out there. So watch that early, just like I said early on, watch and see from Florida State, how do they handle pressure? The game will come down to those two things early. Can you stop the run, which neutralizes their best player on offense? Do you have an answer for the blitz, which gives your young quarterbacks a chance to succeed and make North Carolina play you honest? If the answer is no to either one of those or both in the first quarter, turn it off. Go watch another good football team play somewhere else, because there won't be a chance to win the game if you don't do that. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I'm looking at Lola Hayes' usage. And I remember the first week of the season against Tech. Now, that was a game with very few possessions. So everybody's participation numbers were down. But even still, Lola Hayes only got 13 snaps in that game. And as you recall, the second drive for the defense, the second possession for the defense in both halves, it was Lola Hayes, Jackson, Daniel Lyons, and Patrick Payton. So you had not wholesale changes, but a lot of changes. Oh, sorry, Byron Turner instead of Payton. Sorry, Payton for Turner. And that group made so much more of an impact. And I saw it again last week on the exterior. Now, again, Darrell Jackson's come to life at a different level. So I like that Lyons is in the rotation. I like what I see out of Sampson at times. He's young, but you need to get him the experience. But when you're talking about specifically defensive end, it's amazing how much more you see 13 around the football than you do 7. And even 11 to a degree. Like, I'd almost make Lola Hayes our number one most utilized at this point defensive end, because I know he's going to give a damn. Pat Payton, when he does care, plays pretty well.
Really good, yeah. When he doesn't, which is frequent.
And that makes no damn sense. This was a money year. You're just costing yourself. And that's what's frustrating about the college game and money, is that it doesn't seem to be that these guys think it's a trampoline effect. That, okay, this is a nice little base that's going to get me to where I want to go next. Like Jared Verse understood that last year. He was paid handsomely. Braden Fisk was paid handsomely, but they knew that the real payday was coming. And so you don't see that a whole lot this year out of certain positions. But Lola Hayes is not one of those players to be concerned about. I hope he's a part of it today, because, again, this is an opponent that wants to run the football first. And we'll see what the linebacker rotation is like and a safety rotation. If it's a run-first opponent, I hope Earl Little does play a hell of a lot more. Because I'm not sure exactly how good Earl Little is if you're worrying about playing thirds in the back end of the defense or quarters. I don't know. I have too deep. I've got no idea because he's a slot corner that's converted to safety. But I know what you're going to say. But hang on, if it's a running opponent, this is a guy who clearly wants to make a highlight reel for destroying somebody, a la the 13 Seminoles, the 2010 Seminoles. Give that man his crack today.
I won't say what I was going to say because you know what I was going to say. So you're right. Let's see if that guy comes flying in against the run and we're all inspired and we watch some other guys. Maybe it's infectious. Maybe all of a sudden you see a bunch. Hey, I gotta admit, you know, I'm not a big Omar Graham fan. I'm not a guy that's championed him. Played really well the last couple of games. He's made plays. He's been around the football. He's played hard. I can tell you that. Clearly he's healthy. So good for him. I mean, I can't be all negative all the time. There are some guys that are playing hard and some guys that have actually gotten better over the course of this season. He's one of them. So we'll see if he's out there today making plays as well. Quick break. Today's pregame show brought to you by Hotel Indigo Tallahassee College Town. Whether you're a frequent guest, a business hosting your event, or stopping by the restaurant, bar, and rooftop before an FSU home game, Hotel Indigo Tallahassee wants to thank you for your continued support and being part of the family. If you want to host your next event with the best view of Doak Campbell Stadium on all of Tallahassee, call Jay Green at 850-755-9011. Hotel Indigo Tallahassee, welcome to our neighborhood.
Hey, this is Jay Green from Hotel Indigo Tallahassee. Can I stop and say thank you? Thank you for telling your guests to stay with us. Thank you for hosting your corporate meetings and social events in our rooftop meeting space. Thank you for hanging out with us on FSU football game days. Believe it or not, this sales guy isn't selling anything. I just want to say thank you. But if you've never seen our rooftop and I can ever help, give us a call, 850-755-9011. We are Hotel Indigo Tallahassee. Welcome to our neighborhood.
Look who's there on the screen to the left for the post-game show, buddy.
With this spindly little body.
That's right. Yeah.
You just split my head.
I did. We made a cheap edit. We made a cheap. It's not even your cartoon character. It's the show logo head.
Yeah, you just
we put a name tag over Gene.
That is funny. Look at that. Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah, we will be together 10 to 15 minutes after the game, maybe 10 to 15 before the end of the game. You guys, you never know. It's a floating start time with this squad. So we'll see. Like if we're down 40-7 early in the fourth, Tommy and I are firing up the mics and the video, baby. We ain't sitting around waiting for that nonsense. But if they are in it with a chance to win it, it will be 10 to 15 after the game ends.
I just love how this is the first time, because it wasn't successful the weekend of the Ryder Cup when I was gone 3 years ago. You and callers on a collision course. How about that? Phone callers and Jeff Cameron himself.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I did it for years, like, I don't know, 15, 20. And then I've enjoyed the 6 or 7 without, or more, maybe 10. How long has it been since?
We did a couple of caller pregame shows when there were sudden cancellations for COVID. Remember we were on the air for a couple of pregame shows.
That's right. It was a weird time. Yeah.
We got word that, game's canceled. Like, okay. So we're not playing today. Let's take some phone calls. That's the last time it happened.
You know, I'm rather going to enjoy it, to be honest with you. I like connecting with people, and I certainly have applauded, because I'll tune in from time to time to see you guys in the post game just to get a feel for the vibe of where the fan base is at. I always want to hear from you, Tom, and about like where your head's at, because we both react to games sometimes similarly, other times very dissimilar. And so I never really know, because I don't talk to you about it in game. I might fire you a text here or there if somebody does something that it pisses me off beyond reason. But I know for the most part, you're locked in and you're looking for certain things that are going to shape the way that you talk about this game, whether it's individuals, whether it's big, broad concepts, whether it's a season-long look or a microcosm. And so I'll tune in if I'm not out and about having a big time with people, and I'll see he feels similarly to me about this one. Oh, really? I didn't look at it like that. I have to go back tomorrow morning and look at the game that way. And I kind of do that, but I always listen to the first few callers. I know the first one is always the same, but like I'll go through like 5 to 7 callers for the most part and kind of, all right, where are they at? And this is a long-winded way of saying I'm very impressed. Most people seem to be pretty measured. You don't seem to have, there hasn't been an outraged, mad as hell, not going to take it anymore. I would say that in a season like this, any one result, I mean, the time for that exacerbated, are you effing kidding me phone call? Well, that was 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
That was 6 weeks ago. It wouldn't be now. I mean, now the pall over the program, the realization of what the year is and who they are, it's well known by everybody, and it'll be seen, unfortunately, with the attendance today. So, and this is all I would expect. It's just more conversations. The same. I do think, big picture, Tom, on a pregame show like this, we've highlighted the Carolina players to look for, but it's a lot more macro than micro every week right now for Florida State. You'd like to get a result today. You'd like to find a way to get another win. You'd like to win a conference game again. You'd like a lot of things to be different, of course. But what I think everybody's looking for right now is probably different person to person. Because if you're a fan that has already, kind of washed your hands of the season, it's a lost season, are you still tuned in? If you are, what is it you need to see to feel better? Is there anything you could see to feel better? Ask yourself that before you go into Doak today or when you're watching at home. What would you need to see? Because, again, results at this point are kind of, they're 1-7. Do you need to see a shift in philosophy from Mike? Do you need to see a different looking Mike on the sidelines? Do you need to see different players filling different roles? What do you need to see to feel better, regardless of the result, about Florida State football? And then is there anything you could see today that would make you feel worse? I mean, I really don't know, because I think it begins with the offensive line and it ends with the offensive line. I've been saying that for weeks and weeks and weeks. And when we do these score predictions, and I talked this week about, I think we could score in the 20s, because I don't think Carolina's defense is elite, to say the least. But they do provide problems because they will be uber aggressive. They are going to attack the young quarterbacks. They are going to really dial up pressure, and I think they'll do it early and often. So it's really going to be answered in the first quarter, but to me, this offensive line doesn't really give you a chance to ever feel good game to game. They just don't. They're not competitive series to series. That doesn't allow for much evaluation of everybody else, Tom.
Yeah, look, I there's nothing I care to see about the coaches. Like a different scheme or a different philosophy. It's about players at this point, because here's what I expect today. False starts or offside penalties, 12 men on the field, had timeouts that we shouldn't need to take because of disorganization. And some of that might be on the young players not knowing where to be. Like that it's forgivable to me if you have to burn a timeout because BJ Gibson lines up in the wrong spot and you call timeout and Mike is berating a freshman. Like, okay, that's within bounds to me. But when you have clearly like a play getting in late, or you've got 10 men on the field on a punt and you have to call a timeout, or you've got 12 men and you don't want the officials to catch you, so you pop a quick TO in the first half. Like that kind of stuff I'm fully expecting to see, and that sucks. And that's stuff that can be really cleaned up and managed, and it's the sign of the kind of garbage that we decried when Willie Taggart was 3-4 games into his tenure at Florida State. We're saying, do they practice? Do they practice? I find myself asking myself far too often this season, do they even practice? Because it looks like they've never done this before. What they're being asked to do right now, it looks like they've never done before. And we know the answer is that they do practice, which is all the more alarming, which brings me to what do I need to see today? Cromanhawk / Glenn making some throws. Loane McCoy making a dude miss in open space. Maybe Mekhi Danzy isolated against the linebacker. BJ Gibson getting a chance to show his physicality. Elijah Moore not being thrown to over the middle where he could get his head taken off. These are the things that I want to see today. And I thought Rizzy played okay at left guard last week. That left side actually wasn't terrible. Robert Scott graded out very well on Pro Football Focus, but in general, there were some moments where you're going, all right, I'm forgetting about the offensive line, which is exactly what you want to do. A good offensive line is like a good official in a football game. You don't think about them. So I'm hoping that we see a little bit more of that, but it's player-based. It has really little or nothing to do with, well, I hope this coach dials this up this week. No, man, I'm hoping that we see replacements for several of these guys year over year. So there's nothing I want to see from, that standpoint.
I think the biggest thing that could happen for Florida State today, besides, maybe getting a win, that'd be nice, is if Croman Hawk, who I think is probably the more skilled of the two, gets the opportunity to take a big step forward. Now, listen, I want them both to play. I'm not giving up on Brock in any sense of the word. I want that to be a competition. But I believe long-term, if they're both still here, that Croman Hawk will be the answer long-term. There's nothing that I've seen so far that you would say, oh, somebody's got the lead by a lot. Nothing like that. They both take, turns making a throw where you go, oh, okay. But they've also both taken turns where you go, ooh, no. So there's all of that. But I think if Croman Hawk shows you that there's real growth happening in real time, it's happening right now, you're watching this on the field of play under the lights, you could get excited about that. All the sense that I get from talking to people within the program, talking to some people outside the program, is that those two young men want to be here. Now, it doesn't mean they will be, but they want to be here. And what I need to see down the stretch here is, are there reasons? Are they giving us reasons? Are we giving them reasons to want to stick around? And I sure hope that's the answer, because I'd hate to lose both those young men and start from scratch, which, this is the thing. We're late in the year now, and you're starting to kind of take a good long look at your players that you value, your players that could be part of the solution next year if you're able to go out and supplement their good play with a cast of characters that can obviously dig us out of this ditch. That's what I'm looking for now. I want to see how much they play and how well they play, and are they getting better each time that they play? And that's really the only thing I'm looking for each week that we go into these games.
This is how, because this stat line is not great, but if you gave me 18 of 33 for 245 from Luke, I'd take that right now. I'm like, okay, 18 of 33 for 245. First of all, it means Luke plays more. It means
I would take that all day, every day.
Right.
That's a good day for a true freshman quarterback behind this line. You give me that line, buddy, we're cooking with gas.
Well, think about, okay, let me do you one better. Let's just say the final line is that 18 to 33, 245, 3 touchdowns, and Florida State scores 31 points against a bad defense today. What is absurd?
Ooh, what a post-game show we're going to have.
Well, what is absurd is that idea feels absurd at 9:50 in the morning before kickoff, that we can score 30 points in a football game. But let's just live in that world for 15 seconds, that is exactly what happens. That's Luke's line. Florida State scores 4 touchdowns, kicks a field goal today to get to 31 points, and they win the football game. Can't you just feel yourself exhale? Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's what that can do. That's what a young player putting up a stat line can do for you, is just give you a break. Doesn't mean everything is fixed. It just means you get a break. And tonight, the breeze would feel 5 degrees cooler, even though it's still hot outside. You'd be like, it's a gorgeous night. I don't know that it was any more gorgeous than it was going to be. But because Luke threw for 18 for 33 for 245 and 3 tutties, you feel better about life. That's what I'm hoping for today.
Well, I would tell people this, and I would suggest this. Maybe I'm just putting it out there for myself. If that happens, and that's a big if, but if that does happen, do not sit around thinking about all of the other failures of this day and the previous days. Do not think about the failures to come on the road at Notre Dame, a game I will be at. Do not think about any of those things. Do the best you can to be right here, right now, in that moment. The successes have been so precious few that you have got to embrace them when they happen, and not immediately go to the next thing that you think will happen or lament the things that have happened. You're going to have to be truly in the moment. Not trying to be a sage, not trying to be a guru, not trying to be a healer. It's just truth that it is difficult to be of the moment in a season that is this bad. So if Tom's prognostication about Luke going 18 for 35 for 245 and 3 touchdown passes, sweet Jesus, you really did get out over your skis there, buddy. If that happens, man, for a Saturday in November, embrace the hell out of that. Let's not think about the SMU game. Let's not think about Morlock setting for the other team to score. Let's not think about all of the drops and the missed blocks and the miscalculations and the poor evaluations. Just think about this win right here today if it happens. Now I've got my hopes up because I've latched on to Tom's dream scenario, and I've got myself believing, and I don't know that I believe. Maybe when I walk out of this studio, I'll be like, what are you thinking? That's not going to happen. Tom's crazy.
Well, look, if the answer is no to this question, there's no shame in it whatsoever. But do you know who Alonzo Barnett III is? Do you know who that is?
No.
Okay. No shame in that. That's James Madison's quarterback. All right. And James Madison's quarterback was 22 of 34 for 388 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Had a good day, Tom.
He also ran 13 times for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. So this guy put up over 450 on North Carolina's defense and 7 touchdowns. What? That's Jaden Daniels against Florida last year kind of numbers is what this kid did. So I'm here to say that if Alonzo Barnett III can go 22 of 34 for 388 and 5, I don't think I'm asking that much. For Luke Cromenhawk, who had a dalliance, whom Georgia valued at the 11th hour and really tried to get him to flip to become a Bulldog, I don't think it's too much to ask, even with this offensive line, that somebody not from James Madison but from Florida State can go 18 of 33 for 245. Come on now. We can do this. We can dream and we can do it together.
I love that you care to do it, buddy. You know who Eli Holstein is, don't you?
Yes.
What do you think he threw for against North Carolina?
407.
Close. He was 25 of 42 for 381 and 3 touchdowns. They had no problems with this North Carolina team. Eli was back there slinging it, baby. Of course, both those teams seem to have had some semblance of an offensive line that day. So I'm going to guess, even though I didn't see a second of it other than replay, that James Madison was able to accomplish that at quarterback and elsewhere because, I don't know, that guy had time to throw, and also they blocked for him in the run game.
Right. Well, yes, and if you want me to be balanced, okay, let me throw out Anthony Calandria's line from last week. 16 of 28, 156 yards, 2 interceptions, sacked 9 times.
That feels about the kind of thing that we might see, Tom. That feels what that feels like, buddy. That seems like something we're prone to. Yeah. Maybe not the 10 sacks.
But let's all be more like Alonzo Barnett III today. That's my motto today. Let's be like Alonzo Barnett III. That's the day we want to be.
It is the day we want to be. It's the player we want to be. I at the end of the day am so torn on this game because there are so many moments from going back and looking at North Carolina, just as you did, that you see opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. That's Mike's buzzword, of course. There are opportunities. He's not wrong. It's everywhere against this North Carolina team. And yet, I see some really good players that are going to cause this offensive line a lot of problems. You know, I always talk when we go through the game on paper and we go through the advanced numbers and all the success rates and those things every week. And one of the things that stands out is always havoc rate. And when I look at havoc rate, North Carolina has had moments this year where they create a hell of a lot of havoc. Doesn't always work, but they create a hell of a lot of havoc. Florida State seldom creates a lot of havoc. Now, they did last week against Miami. They did. And that's why Miami had to resort to the run game. Miami just fell back on the run game. Sadly, Tom, you took away the Heisman Trophy candidate, but you had nothing for the running game.
Yep.
Does Florida State have anything for the run game today if they're able to take away North Carolina's air attack. That's interesting.
This is one thing. If you're in the booster section and you're right behind the bench, just take a look at the interactions with the linebackers and the coaches and the defensive coordinator and the linebackers and that down the line. I just wonder if there's any changes there. And this is not a hint. This is not inside knowledge. It's just the way that Mike finally broke, like all of us, on Monday when describing the missed fits for Florida State in the run game and said they don't do anything complicated. It goes to show you that even if you're extremely late for the party, I'm still glad you're here, because Mike showed the kind of frustration in his eyes when he said, well, they weren't doing anything complicated, and these are just simple missed fits in the run game. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's what we've been talking about for years here.
And there have been issues.
There have been issues. And today, let's not miss any fits. Let's make them look like misfits rather than us missing fits.
There have been issues.
Yeah, there have been issues. I thought last week was the first definitive signs of immense frustration turning into outward emotion. And both in his language and his body language, it's like his actual words, his body language, his reaction on the sideline, and his comments post-game and early this week in practice. For those of you looking for signs that there are going to be massive changes, or at least significant changes on this coaching staff, you got it this week. You got it this week. You got it that Saturday, and you got it on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. You got it. He basically told you, yeah, we're going to be changing things. And that's about the best you can hope for, because you're not going to get a guy to come out and say, oh, don't worry, by the time the season's over, everybody, I will have these 7 guys fired and I'll be bringing in these 7 guys to replace them. He's not going to do that. He's not going to tell you that. He's not going to go through that. But I think his words this week seem to suggest, really the last 2 weeks, that change is afoot and change is going to be significant. And listen, you're looking for little signs that he gets it. You're looking for signs that he understands the profundity of this. I mean, like this, what you get, guy, by the way, what we're looking at here, right, Mike? You do get that. I think you got those indicators, don't you believe? I mean, to me, he's clearly telling you, yeah, guys, yeah.
Well, we're in November and we're looking for our second win of the season. If you can't see it in this situation, you never will, and that would be a really, really scary thing. I agree with you. The rhetoric is finally moving where it should, but I was talking to a great friend of mine last night, good friend of yours as well, and he's like, do you just ever stop and say, oh my God, we're 1-7? Like, that's outside of the realm of possibility. Even I was a student in the lost decade. It was, what bowl are we going to? What sorry ass bowl are we going to? It wasn't, can we win 3? Like, that's where we are now. And it's just, if this doesn't give you enough cause to make sweeping changes, nothing will. We're in November looking for our second win of the season. What program does that? Like, not us until this year.
All right, so that's where we are, and that's depressing and very frustrating. Today is another chance to go out and get a win, double your win total. We'll see. I can't be so bold as to tell you that I think it's going to happen, because I haven't thought that all week, but I haven't thought that they were going to lose all week either, and that's rare. Most of the time, I'm pretty sure they're going to lose and lose going away. So this has been one of those weeks where I'm like, I don't know. Sadly, admittedly, the last time I felt this way was recent against Duke. I thought they'd beat Duke. I don't think Duke has a lot that they bring to the table. And, of course, we gave that game away pretty early. Duke went into a shell rightfully. And really, you couldn't win that game because you couldn't do a lot of things well, and it's very, very frustrating. So, I think that same opportunity has presented itself here today. I'm not so bold as to say it will happen, because when you can't block, it's very difficult to predict much of anything besides inconsistency and poor offensive play. And we will not be able to block consistently well. There's no magic dust no wand that you can wave and make these offensive linemen good. They're not. They're not good. And they don't communicate either. So the consistency that you seek in order to get a win is usually longing. But, Tom, do you think Florida State gets a win today as we get set to sign off?
Sadly,
you don't have to say yes. You don't have to say yes if you don't believe it.
No, I don't. This team's got to prove it. But I will say, once again, let's see, this is our 9th game of the season. For probably the 7th time this year, it's absolutely within the realm of possibility. It is within their capability to do so. So I'm not saying that they can't. I'm just saying that they've won once. So you got to prove it. And I'm just hoping that guys that care to be on the field are on the field. This is a different kind of test. This is almost like going to play at Wake for a good football team at noon when nobody's in the stands. This is what you're going to have to summon your own juice today. Bring your own guts, as a guy we hated has often said. I hope they do that today. I hope there's a bunch of Earl Littles out there on both sides of the football, because if there are, then you got a real chance to win the game.
We will be joining one another yet again. It's a day full of Jeff and Tom. What a great Saturday for you. You got this morning. Fret not. 1 o'clock. We'll be over there at Hotel Indigo. More of this right here. Only in the flesh, baby. Get an opportunity to shake hands and talk to the Noel faithful and commiserate, as I did last night at Corner Pocket before going to see Leon get a win, Tom. How about that?
All right.
Rare win. And then, of course, after the meet and greet, the game is played, you'll rejoin us again. And this time it's for the post-game show. I might be right back here in this studio. I could be, who knows? I could be off in the woods, belligerently drunk with a laptop. Who knows? Who knows? But tune in to find out. Imagine if I was in the woods. Like, Jeff, what are you doing? I'm in the woods, Tommy.
I'm at the Greenway. It's which one? I don't remember, but it's one of the greenways we have in this town.
Great Wi-Fi, surprisingly. Let's do this post-game, baby.
It's a horse. Look, guys, it's a horse.
Oh, man, it's sad. Good work out of you. Thanks, Ben, and thanks to all of you for tuning in to Warchant Game Day. We really appreciate you. Thank you, Hotel Indigo. We'll see you in a few hours. Looking forward to it, in fact. Until next time, go Noles. Be well, everybody.